Maaf, Pak. Enggak.
We believe that Team Affirmative tried to steal my merits, but they are engaged in strategies that I would not have done on the affirmative, which are to concede the continuing punishment for criminal is okay, because when first speaker told you that they would continue to disallow CEOs getting into positions of being another CEO, he conceded that there are circumstances where continuing punishment should be allowed. He also conceded that the past behavior is often a very good criteria on which to judge the present and future behavior. So we are going to tell you that the logic actually extends to all criminal records, and it is not as specific and cannot be contained to the cases first speaker attempted to contain it. Two issues in my rebuttals. Firstly, whether or not the employer should be able to decide punishment. So we will say that employers do not have a responsibility to facilitate the rehabilitation of criminals, and in first instance, that is the responsibility of the state. The moreover, it implies an assertion that we think should not stand in this debate, that the rehabilitation of criminals should be the main priority of employers. We don't think that is the case, because what is their own interest is the protection of their co-workers in other employees and their customer. Second response is, this is not that we don't think giving employers access to criminal records is a sentencing this ex-criminal to a further form of punishment, but it is a very valid point of merit and whether that person would be a good employee in the context of their company, and I will talk about it more in my substantive. Secondly, whether or not getting a job is required for rehabilitation. There is a weird logic coming from first speaker of government when he said you need a job to access food and healthcare. We say we support the minimum standard of welfare in today's debate. We don't think that this issue should be a concern for both things. He said also that we need employment because it is beneficial to people's life. It is, however, not necessary for any criminal's rehabilitation, because when you are not hired because of past criminal activity, it means that because your criminality affects your applicability and appropriateness to be employed for that company. Even if that isn't the case, and even if it's just a bias towards criminals, we think that the idea that you have previously made the moral calculus that it's okay to commit a crime demonstrate that it is most likely that the rest of society make that calculus in the future. Moving to my substantive materials. Firstly, I'm going to talk about why past criminality is a valid criterion on which to judge merit of employee. First thing first, I want to clarify a few things on the production of the criminal record. We're talking about serious crime because if it's juvenile crime, that record is not going to be recorded, and you can also employ the conviction without going at the discretion of a judge when that conviction would not require being recorded. We're talking about crimes against person and also crimes against property. We think on both of these cases, the past behavior is a good indication of future behavior, because when an individual has shown an action in the past and being convicted for an action that violates social calculus of what is an appropriate form of behavior, meaning that they are more likely than the rest of society to make that moral calculus. Yes.
It is true that committing a crime is wrong, but why socially outcasting them even after they complete their sentence is still the right thing to do?
The thing is, it is not the burden of negative team to tell you that every past criminal will re-offend, but it is our burden to tell you that they are more likely to commit crimes, and then the employer might have this incentive to hire someone who is more likely to commit crimes. Why does this incentive operate here? Let's look first at offense against person in someone's criminal history. We think that employers have a very distinct responsibility to protect their workers and customers, and indeed they have a legal responsibility to both of these groups. We think we should prioritize the protection of these groups because they already earned the jobs and they already entered into a legal relationship with the employer. Moreover, they also have a right to go to work and feel safe and feel that they are working in a safe work environment. So why Team Affirmative's proposal will undermine this? Firstly, because they can be sure that they are not working next to a criminal that has committed a serious crime, such as an assault or violent crime. To a person. Secondly, we think that even if that was the case, that they work next to ex-criminal under the status quo, they know that their employer would know that the person is an ex-criminal and will be able to interpret their behavior and perceive this person differently. This is the protection we should afford for co-workers and customers in today's debate. Secondly, let's talk about offenses against property. We think that the employers have an incentive to protect their assets and the perception of the integrity of their company. We think that criminals can undermine both of these things because they are more likely to do things again if they have great opportunity to do things like steal from the till or embezzle money or cook books on the current account. Now, let's argue why the employers don't have the responsibility to rehabilitate criminals. We think that when these people are released, it is not to concede that they are totally reformed, but merely conceding that it is no longer necessary for them to stay inside prison. In order to release people, we think we have to be able to place conditions upon what they do. The state, however, the state have already engaged in a significant form of rehabilitation for these people in order to facilitate reintegration. That's why we can see the upscaling occurring in jail. So they are more able to convince the employers in the future that despite their criminal record, they have merit to be hired. We think that that's why we think that it is not right to solve the responsibility of rehabilitating these ex-criminals to these employees. Why? Because you do not have a right to have a job, and we think that when we require people, for instance, were bankrupt in the past to declare that the people they are trading with in the future that they have been bankrupt. We see that we don't have a right to economic activity, just like when we have committed harms or faults in the past. We think that it is silly to say to the unemployed criminals that you need to have a job in order to be a functioning member of society. But as I said, my second speaker will discuss and elaborate further this later in his speech. With this speech, then, we suggest that you should consider that criminality is a valid merit upon which to judge whether or not you will employ people, because it is valid, it is relevant, and the employers have an interest to consider that. That's why we are very proud to oppose this motion. 646.
Dapat apa, Ji?
Biar mana?
Ini kan antara 6 sampai